Okay, welcome. I've had quite a few of you ask me to go through and if there was a recording of the sustainable business section for your exam revision. There wasn't one. I did attempt one, but there was no sound on it. So what I'm going to attempt to do now is recreate that delivery to you and perhaps just enhance it, and then you can use that as a resource for revision for the core question. So we're going to look at sustainable business development, look at the processes, the things that we looked at and the things that you should be bringing into your examination question. So, first thing to remember is that it's a linear process. So as you're discussing through your answer, the sections need to be firstly external analysis, then internal, then your summary SWOT and your key issue statement. And then if you remember these bits here, that was all about the Ansoff matrix. And at the same time as that, when you're considering your strategic options, you would also use Porter's generic framework to look at the options over to you, and then you would set your objectives. So that's the linear process for your answer. So we looked at external analysis. We talked about why we would use strategy for forming those those objectives and defining what the opportunities are. And we looked at how this is quite a dynamic process, so demand changes over time. So we've used pest analysis, things like that. So you do your external analysis, then you look at your internal factors. So we'll go on in more detail when we come to the second PowerPoint of this session. But external analysis, as you can see I'm highlighting, you've got your PESTLE, you've got your market dynamics and your competitor analysis. And again, we'll go through those in slightly more detail when we come to frameworking the answer out. Internal analysis is understanding your own customers and the segments that you've formed for them. You analyse your own performance in terms of the products you're offering or the service that you're providing, and you're analysing internal data. So you're looking at revenue, you're looking at historic revenue, you're looking at forecasted revenue, but you're also analysing the resources that you've got available to you. Now they can be anything from machinery, from plant to human resources, and I would suggest for our industry that the most important resources are the human resources, because those are the things that you spend the most money on in terms of recruiting them, in terms of maintaining their training, getting them up to a level, improving them, developing them as entities within the organisation so that they can go forward to and help your business grow. So you'd use your external analysis and your internal analysis to complete your summary and your SWOT, and that would also lead on to your key issue statement. Just bear with me, computer's playing up. There we go. So we looked at pest analysis. I'm not going to go through the theory of that again with you here, but you've got all your resources in terms of your lecture notes, and I'll also send these slides to you today when I send you the link, the YouTube link for the presentation. But we've got political, economic, social, cultural, and technological. So you can look at all of those and talk briefly about all of those within your answer. And just coming through this a little bit more detail for you there about some of the things that we looked at both in the lecture and in the revision sessions that we did. So we know what SWOT analysis is. Internal appraisal is your strengths and weaknesses, and external appraisal is your opportunities and your threats. And again, I'll talk some more about that in the second slide set when we're looking more about framing your answer. So market research covers your opportunities and your threats. Company research covers your strengths and your weaknesses. That will lead to your external stuff, will lead to what your critical success factors are, and internal what your distinctive competencies are. And all of those are supposedly to enable you to have a competitive advantage, and B, give a superior performance to what you're actually attempting to achieve, which generally is sales. So we looked at that as well, and the main objective of any considerations of SWOT would be to convert your weaknesses to strengths and your threats to opportunities. And you need to match your strengths with your opportunities in order to be most successful. So we talked about what SWOT was, and then that would lead you to key issues arising. Now, your key issues arising, you don't need to draw stuff from every single bit of your internal and your external analysis. So your overall market analysis, if you will. You would just bring in the most important bits of that. So where you think there are flaws in what you're doing that you can make better, or where you think that you've got real strengths that you can push on and make those strengths into helping you to be a market leader. So this is what the purpose of a key issue statement is. This is what it does, etc., etc. Again, you're going to have this presentation sent to you, so you'll already have this by the time you're looking at this on YouTube. So again, we're talking about the linear process of this. We've looked at external analysis, we've looked at internal, we've done the SWOT, we've done the key issues. So once we know what the key issues are, then we can address those by considering what our strategic options might be. Now, in business, there'll be a number of opportunities for you to do this, but what I'm asking you to do is to consider these ones here, and their links with the Ansoff matrix, and I also want you to do Porter's generic framework. So I want you to look at those two processes, those two academic models, as a framework for your answer. So here's some more detail on Porter's generic strategy. So we're looking either at cost or we're looking at differentiation, and you've got explanations all around that diagram for what they are. Once you've done that, then you decide what your focus is going to be, whether you're going to have a narrow focus or a broad focus. And the scope of that focus will determine what your objectives are when you actually set them. So a little bit more detail on Porter's generic strategy, cost leadership, a specific example. You're going to get extra marks if you can give me an example from industry of your own rather than this one. And also you'll possibly get in the question that you need them to be international examples. So we'll be looking at you to focus your answer with an international slant. So the way to do that, the best way to do that, is to look at some of the examples that I've given, or look at some of the examples that you might want to give to highlight what you're saying and frame them in an international context. So again, cost reduction methods and some differentiation, how we achieve it. Here's an example. Now that's a really good international example, but as we already discussed, the bird might just be a little bit too old now. There are others both in United Arab Emirates and around the world that might give you a more contemporary example and an international one. So then you've got to decide what your focus is going to be. Is it going to be broad or narrow? And a little bit more detail about what that might mean to you. Within the slide set that I'm going to send you, there's also a little cartoon that explains that in more user-friendly detail, I guess. So this was the revision question we set in class when we were actually doing lectures. But what I'm going to do now is just move us on to what we looked at in the revision session. So I'll send you this one as well, then you've got both. So you've got plenty there on which to frame your answer. And as we already discussed, it was lots of little mind maps, but I'm not going to make any apology for that because it's a good way for you to visualise what the component parts of the answer are. I'll just wait for that to load. So, this is, relatively similar to the question you might expect. I've already told you, though, to expect an international focus to it. But the basics for us to the question is we're going to be looking for you to give us some description and some academic context to what businesses do to maintain business sustainability. Now, if you look at that mind map there, you've got external analysis, internal analysis, summary SWOT, consider your strategic options, and then setting your objectives. Now, if you look at that, and then I'll show you the other diagram. If you just bear with me a second. You will see that there we've got your external analysis, internal, your summary SWOT, which leads on to your key issue statement. Then you're considering your strategic options and setting your objectives. Out of the way, and then continue on with this one. So there's the main framework, but we'll break that down a little bit more and throw some detail to it. So starting off with your external analysis, you can talk about pests, so political, economic, sociological and technological. Then you can talk about market dynamics, so we're looking at things like demand, opportunity, trends in the market, special or world events, seasonality, anything around the market that you operate in that will affect your productivity in terms of sales generation or in terms of being able to produce the product that you are selling, and that's either a service product or a physical product. Then we looked at competitor analysis, so we've been through benchmarking. These are all things that you came up with in the lecture, remember. We looked at balanced scorecard, different market activities, so things that your competitors are doing that you might not be, or things that you're both doing but maybe they do them better, or you could do them better than them. And then an important one, which is your market share, so what share you've got of the market that you're in. Next we come on to internal analysis, and again all these little nodes to the mind map have come from you guys within the lecture. So we're looking at understanding customers and segments, we're looking at demographic traits, traditional versus modern segments. Remember we looked at the JICNAR ratings, and then we also talked about millennials and baby boomers, Generation X, that sort of thing. Next, we looked at analysing our product and service performance. So we do that via customer data, and we do that by benchmarking again. So customer data will be things like surveys that you give out, or mystery shoppers that you employ who actually see what you're providing in terms of product or service in a live scenario but against parameters that you set for the mystery shopper. Then we've got analysis of your internal data, and we looked at that in terms of revenue and resources. So revenue might be things like your profit and loss, your balance sheet, dividends that you're giving out, cash at hand, etc., etc. Whereas your resources could be things like infrastructure. What buildings do you own? What plants, what machinery do you own? What are the ramifications of having that? Is it a cost thing to you, or is it a cost saver? But then importantly as well, you've got your HR audit. What's the profile of the people that we employ? Then moving down to what skills have those people got? How can we develop them? How can we maximise that development? How can we minimise recruitment costs? And the only way to do that is by retention of staff. And you can make mention there as well that retention is always a challenge in our industry because of the nature of the job. And that just gives your answer a bit of a broader focus. Then we've got your SWOT analysis. So you've got your market research, opportunities and threats, your company research, your strengths and weaknesses, and then we're looking at turning all those into competitive advantage and superior performance, and all that then from your SWOT, from your external analysis, from your internal analysis, etc., that will lead you to produce a key issue statement. Now, as I've already said, your key issue statement is not about a little bit from everything that you've done in that linear process. So it's all about the important stuff. Now, you're not going to be doing a case study for the exam, so you're not going to say, I've looked at this particular thing and the key issues are this, this, this and this. That's not what we're looking for you to do. We're looking for you to say you use all that to produce your key issue statement, and that's when you talk about the importance of it not being this big long list, but it's key things that you as a company or you as a firm or as an organisation can use in terms of going forward and improving whatever aspects of performance you think you would need to improve. Next, you will consider your strategic options. So I want you to look at ANSOF. So you've got market penetration, diversification, product development, market development. I expect you to look at all four of those, give a brief explanation of what they are and how they would work with a real world application. And then also for Porter's generic strategy. So what you're introducing in this part of your answer is ANSOF matrix and Porter's generic strategy are two examples of academic models that a company could use when considering strategic options, and then a brief explanation of what they are. So you're looking at cost leadership or differentiation, then you're looking at focus and all the things around that, which you've already got your notes for. Okay, so that's pretty much all from me. I'm going to shut down the recording now, set it up on YouTube, and by the time you're looking at this, you'll already have the notes as well to look through. Thanks a lot.